thanks for joining us. Do you want to just start off and just tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you grew up and what your childhood was like?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I grew up, I'm Colombian, so I grew up in Colombia, in Bogota, the capital city there. I moved to Los Angeles late 80s. Did all high school here in Los Angeles. And then basically grew up, half and a half Colombia, half Los Angeles. So, yeah, I mean, I travel back and forth a lot back in it. I don't do it as much nowadays, but I used to when I was younger. And then here I did college for a little bit, and then around that time is when I kind of found my way into the film business and forgot all about education.
So what was it like growing up in Colombia? Like, did you have an interest in film? Did you know anybody that was like a filmmaker? And did you have any like inspirations? Like, did you watch a movie or a film or a TV show and think, oh, that's what I want to do?
Funny thing about it, I did have a camera that my uncle gave me. It had a Pentax K3000, I believe it was. And he gave me that camera with a 35 millimeter, I remember. He said, this is the only thing you'll ever need to take pictures. And he gave it to me. I'm not sure why he did that. I'm not sure why he did that, because it was a nice camera at the time. And he didn't give it to his kids. He gave it to me. And I took a lot of pictures, and I kept that camera with me all the time. But I never thought it was a way to make a living, because back home, that's not an avenue for a career, really. Back then, anyway. So I didn't have an interest in being in the film business because it wasn't something that I thought you could do. So back then, my interests were the same as the family's interest. Lawyers, doctors, working for the government. There was a lot of that in my family. So in my head, that's what I was going to end up doing. Not that I liked it, but you just kind of follow the family business or whatever you want to call it. When I moved to Los Angeles, that's when I started to get a much better idea of the film business and photography and the music business, which I tried to get into first. But again, I didn't have the financial means to do any of that, because all those schools, film schools, music schools, those are very expensive and time consuming. And I was already trying to make a living when I was 17 years old. So I actually became a car mechanic. Like a professional car mechanic. I went to school for that in Santa Monica College here in Los Angeles, and I became a ASC certified mechanic. And I worked at dealerships and shops and, customizing cars or whatever, and motorcycles. And right about then is when I ran into someone that could get me in the film business, which I never thought I could. But when the opportunity came, I was like, absolutely. I knew that I could just drop everything I've been working towards as far as the car mechanic went. And I said, drop all that. I went to school for it. I did all this work for it, and I dropped it all on a dime and jumped headfirst to be a PA on a feature film, not knowing if I could make a living at it or what I was going to get paid or any of that. And I just said, boom, jumped into it first, not knowing anything.
So how did you get from Colombia to like LA? Like, what was that process?
That was a very uniquely Colombian thing to happen at the time. In the 1980s, if your family could get the kids out of the country for a little bit, any way possible, they would. So my mom actually figured out a way to give me a scholarship to play soccer here in Los Angeles at a school that offers scholarships for foreign players to come and play. And so she figured that out and got us out, me and my brother, out here to play soccer. And so we did. And that, I wasn't a particularly great soccer player back home, but I was an amazing soccer player here. So it worked out pretty good. And I, pulled that off for a little bit, but then I just ended up staying here and finishing high school and going on to the rest of the stuff.
Did you have any like when you were a kid, like any favorite films that you'd like watch, or like what were you kind of into early on?
It's a funny thing that happens when you don't speak English and you watch a lot of American movies, is that you start loving movies for the way they look and not knowing much of what they're saying. So a lot of the movies that made an impression on me, that made me go, oh, this, maybe realize that there was a difference between movies look-wise, or movies like Brazil or Blade Runner, things like that were so visually different from the regular movies, like the comedies and your action movies. And so those are the movies that made a huge impact on me when I was young, and I didn't know why I liked them so much at the time. And as you get older, you realize it was the way the movie looked and felt that captivated me, and so those movies had a great impact on me really early on, because they were so unique to look at. Because I wasn't quite following what they were saying at all, so I was just looking at movies, not listening to movies. So watching comedies wasn't funny to me, so I didn't do much of that. And action movies just a lot of bangs and blow-ups, and it was like cool. But when you watch something like Brazil or Blade Runner, you're like, oh wow, look at this. You can just watch it and not care what they're saying. So to me, to this day, I'm very much like that on set. Like, I don't care too much of what's going on as long as it looks right, and because I kind of trust that the director's taking care of the other part.
And so you started as a PA. What kind of things were you working on, like music videos, commercials, different projects?
I got dropped at the deep end of the pool my very first day. I got dropped off as a camera PA on the set of Dante's Peak, which is a huge movie back then. So there was, 4 cameras, 3 different film stocks, lots of explosions, lots of fire, stunts, all the big Hollywood stars. And I was just like, whoa. But it felt very much at home for me because the cameras back then were, Panaflexes with Mitchell movements. And they were very mechanical. They had an actual engine inside of them, if you want to call it that, the movement. And when I opened the door to that thing, I was like, oh, wow, look at that, gears and pulleys and stuff. This is the stuff I love. So right away, I felt comfortable in that world. So it was the deep end of the pool, but I could defend myself. I was mechanically inclined, and I could, I understood batteries, I understood all that stuff. And so I was at home right away, and the guys realized that. They're like, okay, this guy is helpful. He's going to be a good one for the camera department.
And so how long were you doing like that job for, and how did you kind of decide I want to be like a director of photography yourself? Like, what was that process over many years?
Yeah, so I started as a PA, sweeping the truck, charging batteries, labeling stuff, getting people's laundry, all that stuff you do in those sets. And then moved up to film loading. I loaded a few films. And I had some films where I had gaps where I wasn't taken on as part of the camera crew for the next feature. So I would have like a 2-month gap in between. So I would go and work at a ski shop or sell shoes or whatever to kind of fill the gaps. And then from there, I started with second assisting. And right about the time I was a second assistant, I jumped off the commercials and music videos. And this would have been late 90s, early 2000s. When the music video business was huge, then we were doing $3, $5, $7 million music videos, and commercials were kind of open-ended budgets, and it was just, lots of money. And so I enjoyed that too, because also the creativity was kind of open-ended. People could do all kinds of cool, crazy stuff. So I was really intrigued when I started doing commercials and music videos, and I kind of dropped off the feature world. I would day play a lot on TV, but I kind of stuck to commercials at that point. And that when I started doing that as a second assistant, eventually I started focus pulling, and I did that for a long time. And at that point, you kind of make a decision. You am I going to be a career focus puller, which is a great living and a great career, or do I try to push forward and try to do what I really want to do, which is actually be on the camera and be part of the artistic process? And I tried that a little bit, but it was hard to make that jump because you need someone to open that door for you. And when you're first assistant and you're busy doing that, it becomes a weird, exit to try to make. So I started operating quite a bit at that point, just to kind of have a medium. I thought operating would be a good passageway, a way to open more doors to try to shoot. Because as an operator, that you do get opportunities to go shoot second unit or effects units on stuff like that. And that's exactly what happened. I started operating, and on a commercial job, a director needed a second unit DP to go run off with him. And when that happened, that director liked what I did. And he said, you want to shoot for me some more? And I said, absolutely. And then we kind of shot a few things. And from there, an agent noticed my work and asked if I wanted to get signed, which to me was a surprise. I thought it was going to be a lot, I was going to have to go to meetings and push and all that stuff. But he knew friends of mine, and that's how that happened. Pure pure luck, really. I mean, I'm not going to say that I did a lot of hard work on my end as far as trying to get out there as a DP. So I got a little lucky on that end. So my story is a little different than guys that go out there and meet all the agents and push their reels and get their stuff together. So it's a little different.
Working your way up from the inside, building that rapport with the directors and kind of learning from other DPs. Did you like kind of over those years learn a few tricks and figure out like certain things in terms of what they were doing? And like, is that kind of how you learned? Like, were you watching other films or like doing research on the side? Like, how did you kind of build up your knowledge?
Well, one of the first things I tell everyone that says they want to be a DP in the camera department is pay attention. You're on set on the best film school you could possibly ask for. Is your own set, working next to DPs and directors. Pay attention. I didn't pay attention when I was a camera assistant. So that's how I know that I wasted a lot of time on set with amazing cameramen that I work with, extremely talented men and women. And I didn't pay quite enough attention. So I was on set, and you could say there was a little osmosis going on because you're on set enough, you start seeing how things work. But I should have definitely been asking more questions about lights. Should have been asking more questions. I should have been eavesdropping on the director DP conversations a lot more, the DP grip and gaffer conversations a lot more. I should have been listening to, instead of hanging out by the camera and talking by the carts on craft service or whatever you do. So when I started shooting, there was a lot of now it's on me now. What do I remember? What have I learned? And it was a lot of kind of grasping at straws at that point. And I thankfully, I had extremely talented key grip gaffer and first assistants that I knew for years from working with them, and they were part of my crew, and I was able to lean on them quite heavily for the first couple of years as far as learning really quickly more about lights, more about everything, diffusions and rags, and I knew the camera part side. But as far as the lighting and the gripping, I had quite a bit of catching up to do. So my first word of advice to anyone on set is don't get tempted by the conversations and the craft service tables and all that stuff. Spend most of your time next to the DP listening to them talk, to the director, to the gaffer, to the key grip, and watch the key grip and the gaffer implement those directions and how do they do it and what was the result. Stand by the monitor, watch that light go on and watch it, see what it does, and then watch that diffusion go on and see what it does. And what kind of diffusion did they use? What kind of light? What all that stuff. And if you do that, by the time you start shooting, you'll be way more ahead of it than I was.
And then in terms of like camera, like technology over the years, like you started in film, and then what kind of cameras were you like experienced with? And then when you started DPing, what were you using? And then up until today, like what are you using now?
It was all Panaflex, golds and Mitchell movements, basically Panastars, platinums, millenniums, static, the Panaflex, the lights and the Steadicam body. So that's all I used for a long time. The first time I saw an Ari was, I think it was on Lethal Weapon 4. One of the cameramen bought an Ari 435 and he brought that on set, and we all looked at it like, the hell is this thing? We had IMOs, we had Ari 3s, but we used those as crash cams. We put them in a house, a car would run over it, would blow it up or whatever. So that's the only time we used those cameras, but it was all Panaflexes. But once I jumped to the commercial world, it flips. You don't see Panavisions anymore. It's just all Ari. So it was all Ari 3s and 435s and 235s, which is the tiny little camera. And then every now and then that would throw that craziness of Atons and movie cams and all those all the cameras. But so if the 435 became a workhorse for me for many years in the commercial world. And I love that camera. It's so reliable and fast to load and simple. So I used that for a long time. And then once it transitioned to digital, that was a very slow transition. We started with the Vipers and the what was the other cameras we were using? The Vipers and the Genesis and the Red One, which was a thing that nobody wanted to touch at the time. The red one was, I think the red one and the Vipers is what made everyone, took the digital transition longer than it should have, because those cameras were so different from film that people are like, we don't want to touch those things. But once the Alexa came out, that was it. I mean, it was almost instantaneous that the industry flipped to digital. The camera made sense for us. We understood it. Didn't have a big umbilical coming out of it, and we could turn it on ourselves, and we could do the settings ourselves. And it was a camera for the set. It wasn't a camera for a technician in a trailer. So when that happened, the Alexa became the workhorse automatically. Film almost just disappeared from one day to the next. And that's been the camera. Of course, there's Reds, and now with the Sony Venices. So now at this point, I say it's a mixed bag of, you can actually pick and choose your look from the cameras. As you know, you used to do that with film and emulsions. Now you can kind of do it with digital cameras. So I'd say what I use the most right now would be the Alexa LF, the Mini LF. And then I use the Sony quite a bit if it's a very specific color situation, especially with cars. So I use the Sony for that. So that's the two cameras on top of the game right now. You know, they kind of took over the whole thing.
So would the Sony be better in low light situations, or is that like just dependent on the color that you're saying?
I realized the Sony was the camera to use in certain situations when I was doing an accurate job, and they had this car that was a specific blue. And the note from the agency and the clients that they're very concerned that the last few commercials, the color wasn't coming out the way they wanted it. Even to the colorists that were just quite not nailing that color. And it was all shot on Alexa, which beautiful colors, but it wasn't rendering that specific color that well. And there was a note from the agency about it. So I said, well, you know what, let's do the Sony. You know, it's not working with Alexa, let's just do the Sony. See what happens. And when we did the Sony, the second we turned the camera on, the first note from the agency is like, that's it. That's the color. They were happy right away. So I realized that the Sony is less cinematic, more realistic. So you can if you have that knowledge, then you know that you can use one or the other for when you want to push one direction or the other direction. Now they're both very cinematic and they're both realistic, but they just, you know, the Sony prefers a little bit more of that, and Alexa prefers more of this. So the Sony to me is when they say these are the color palette. Like for example, the Bronco spot you brought up, they have very specific colors on that one, a specific yellow, a specific blue. I said, well, we got to use the Sony so that we make sure those colors come through exactly as they are. So that's how I choose those, choose the Sony over the Alexa sometimes. If it's more, if I want to go more cinematic, a little softer, the Alexa tends to be more my speed for that.
So in terms of like commercials, at the end of the day, it's up to like the client in terms of what color or what look they're going for.
But they have notes, they have opinions, and you can either go or you can go, okay, I can work with that and I can help. Sometimes they have great opinions that you agree with, and sometimes you're like, I'm not gonna do that too much. I don't agree with it. So it's a game. There's definitely a lot of politics in that world when the agency or the client come to you with a note about how they think things should look. You can either explain to them why you think what you're doing is better, or how you're going to meet them in the middle, or how they're right, and you'll do it that way. So it's definitely a case by case basis on that one. I don't always just say no to them or you'll say yes to them. And the director sometimes says forget them. Don't listen to that, or he says, "Hey, man, let's do what they want." So all of that plays into it.
It's, I guess, a matter of keeping them happy so you can get the next job. Like, you don't want to upset anyone, but yeah. But in terms of like camera, like movement, camera, like equipment, like technology to move the camera, like how have you seen that progress over the years? Because I guess gimbals, like the smaller gimbals, are fairly new, but I'm sure they've been around longer, like with the Ukraine arms, with the camera cars and all that kind of stuff. Like, how have you seen like that change over time, and how have you like implemented it into your work?
I would say the biggest change in the commercial car industry, at least, The regular commercial side of the world hasn't changed too much, and the gimbals haven't been a big part of it. They're part of it now, but they're a small part of it. They don't always come out. It'll be a Steadicam or handheld or dolly, or a crane, a jib, which has been the standard for decades now. The gimbal will come out, at least on my sets. The gimbal will come out for very specific things, and I usually only use it in one mode. And I don't know if you're familiar with Chris Herr, a gimbal operator. He has a very specific rig that he uses. So when I'm going to use the gimbal, I'm thinking of him and that setup. The rest of the time is going to be Steadicam or dolly, handheld or jib, the standards. But on car commercials, it's completely different. The car commercial, once the armed car came out, the Ukraine came out on the scene, it changed everything. We used to have, 2 grip trucks and electric trucks and a whole array of toys, how to mount the camera, how to run next to the car with the camera. We had all these amazing race cars that were built just for chasing cars, and platforms and trucks that will pull cars and all these things that we used to use. And car commercials used to take forever because you used to have 3 units going at the same time, one for mounting on the car, one for running next to the car, one for shooting inside the car. And we used to have bucks where they cut the car up into a bunch of pieces and you could shoot inside the car. So that was the car industry then. Once the armored car came out, almost like when the Alexa came in the scene, that all disappeared almost from one day to the next. All those toys, all that stuff, the crew got that much smaller. You almost never used electric crews anymore because the armored car came on the scene, and it just became the tool and the standard and the only way you did it. Now I think we're all starting to kind of go, okay, let's not make it all armored car. Let's start implementing other things into this. Let's go back to mounting on the car. Let's go back to chasing in other ways. So if I'm doing a car commercial, obviously there's an armed car and some, drones. We use drones now for establishing shots and things like that. And I started using FPV drones for creating nice swoopy moves around the car that you can't do with anything else. So the car commercial world has changed quite a bit, a lot, because of those tools, the FPVs, the armed cars. So they created a whole different style. And a regular commercial set, I'd say everything's still pretty much the same as it's always been. I don't think a lot of those tools get put in too much. Just because you're not going to use those movements that you do with the cars. Trying to sell this action or this dynamic range of movements when you're selling peanut butter, So it's standard on that. So I say it depends on the job or what my tool of movement is. I do a lot of handheld. So if you're gonna say what's my favorite way to move the camera, for me it's almost always handheld. Not because I like the documentary feel or all that stuff, but I have more control over the movement that way myself, and I try to be as smooth as possible. I don't want it to look like handheld. So that would be my favorite way to move the camera on set.
And are you operating yourself still?
I do. The only time I don't operate is when there's a Steadicam. And it's tricky because I get very specific about the way I like things framed. And so the Steadicam operator becomes sometimes a victim of my craziness about how to frame things. But I try to operate as much as I can. I operate on the armed car, I operate on the jibs, I operate handheld on the dolly. And I leave the Steadicam to the Steadicam operators because they do something I can't. But that's the only time I don't touch the camera.
Yeah, and in terms of like the progression of like car commercials in general, how have you seen it like change? Like you said, it's kind of, you've brought in all these new tools and new looks. Like I'm sure there's like this evolution of like once somebody else uses a drone, like that comes more acceptable, whereas like I know there's like certain angles and heights document that they'll give you and say we want the car to look from this angle, and then if the lens is too wide and the car looks a little like obscure, they might like say that's not a good shot or whatever. Like, so I'm sure over time like the progression has changed, like everybody's like pushing each other and it's kind of moved in a certain direction, whereas maybe 10 years ago would have been like kind of the same look as well, like a little safer, and then like everyone's trying to one up each other. Like how have you seen like that progression over time?
There's definitely well, I mean, I want to say that the arms race of how to shoot car commercials has always been around, because when I used to work, I wasn't a regular with his crew, but I used to work sometimes with guys like Bill Bennett, and his whole thing was always coming up with a new cool way to shoot a car. What's the new cool toy, gadget, or cool way to do it that's going to confuse people? And what can we do that's going to be unique and people are going to wonder how I did it? So that always been a part of shooting cars. How do you do it differently? How do you make people go, wow, what was that? I think the arm car kind of took that away for a long time, because we started using arm cars. And it became a way of how do I use the arm car better than this guy? And that's not a big field to try and impress people on how to use an arm car. But I think lately that's changed quite a bit. I think guys like McGregor and are pushing that envelope as far as like, okay, let's step it up a bit here. Let's step away. Let's use the arm car, but let's use other stuff as well. So it's cool because it pushes everybody. Everybody starts going, okay, I can't just sit in an arm car all day and just shoot this thing. Let's actually think out of the box again. So it's been pretty cool lately. And that's, when I have a thing coming up now, and the director specifically said, I want to wow people on this one. So what do you got? So I've been for the last 2 weeks sitting here because I'm going to be there in a couple of weeks sitting here. Okay, what are we doing in this one? And I've been looking at all kinds of different ways of playing with new toys and things like that. So it's exciting because I think people now are off their couch or the arm car couch and going, all right, enough of that. Let's start thinking of new stuff.
And so when like the manufacturer, like the client or the agency says like, that's weird, like what is this? Like, are you able to show them other commercials, like national campaigns or from a bigger brand and say, look, they've done it before. So then they'll feel more comfortable to be like, oh, okay. And then they'll be like, okay, we trust you. Whereas if you're like doing something new and exciting and that hasn't been done before, it's kind of hard for you to say, this is how to do it. And then they'll be like confused, like that's weird,
To sell ideas that you can't show. When I first started using an FPV drone, I'm not gonna say I was the first one to use it on a commercial, of course not. But I do remember I couldn't find any commercials where FPV drones had been used. I'm sure they were out there, and there were guys that thought about it way before I did. But I just couldn't find any references. I scoured the internet for like FPV drones and commercials, and I looked at people that flew up here. I asked them. I contacted FPV pilots, say, hey, what have you showed commercial-wise? Like, not much, just content for YouTube. And so when I was trying to sell the FPV drone idea for this big, 10-day campaign, and it was there was a big job, 2 crews, two film crews, 2 directors, biggest campaign for the year for this company. And I'm trying to sell this toy with a GoPro on it and tell them we should use this. And they all looked at me like I was crazy. So it was hard to sell that one. But thankfully, the director saw it. Like she said, I see exactly what we can do with this, and this is exactly how we're going to make this spot do what it needs to do. So thankfully, she said, yep, that's what we're doing. And I was able to bring in 2 great FPV drones that proved that this thing was incredible. So that's one way that you try to bring in a new toy, and you have nothing to show to prove that it's a good idea. But you just have to have some trust from somebody up, like director or somebody. And thankfully, a lot of times you do. But otherwise, you do have to pull out all references out. Like, what are you doing with this? Well, see this commercial? They use that. And it happens a lot with like anamorphic. Saying, I want to shoot this anamorphic. And they go, well, how's anamorphic at night on cars? And then you have to, because if they haven't worked with it, you have to start putting references out. Like, well, this is anamorphic at night with cars. And this is what it looks like. And so you have to do a lot of that kind of work.
Yeah, because I was talking to Caleb from Beverly Hills Aerials. He does like a lot of the drone work, and he was explaining like they got all the FPV drones, and like they were trying to show it to directors and DPs early on, probably 2018 or earlier maybe, and just trying to say like you should use this. And a lot of the DPs would say, oh, I want to keep the horizon level, or I don't want to, like, it looks a little crazy. And then until another big DP uses it, or like someone like Michael Bay uses it on a film, then they're kind of like, okay, yeah, let's use it. So you need somebody to kind of take the lead, and like then everyone else will feel comfortable. Because that's what I was kind of thinking is like whenever you try to innovate or do something different, everyone's going to kind of critique it until it becomes the norm.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that's how it all works. You try to push something new, you have to kind of show them that's been done, or get lucky enough that someone supports your idea and show it. Because up until FPV drones were considered establishing shot, right? Overhead, vista, coming out of the mountain, whatever, show the city. It wasn't a shot creator for showing something in movement, because the drones just couldn't go that fast. They couldn't move that fast past an object. And yeah, you wanted, if you're doing that, you want to feel. I always call the drones a sky dolly. That's how I talk to drone operators that I don't work with often, or new guys are out of town, and they try to ask me how do I want the drone shots to look. I said, I want you to pretend you're on dolly track in the sky. I don't want to see, I don't want you to show off your skills. I'm sure you're very talented, but this is not what we're doing. I want solid horizons. I want beautiful movement. I want tracking. And so that's how we use them. So when you show up with something that goes like this, you're like, get this thing out of here. It's scary looking. But once you use it not for that, you use it for a completely different shot, and now you're swooping around a car, you go, oh, wait, that's what this is for. It's not a drone shot. This is a movement shot. So then it becomes a lot more obvious how you can use it. Now, of course, everyone's like, okay, so let's bring them on every shoot.
Yeah, it seems like there's always kind of like the tools in the tool shed that they bring and to kind of get the certain shots in terms of like, they got the arm car, and then they'll like have bolt-ons, and then maybe like different. Now the drone's always in there. So, so how do you kind of communicate with your team, or like how do you kind of get things organized in terms of like to get what you want? Because I'm sure, it takes a lot of people, a lot of moving parts to make sure that everything kind of lines up and you get the shot that you've envisioned in your head.
So I always have to be careful when I say this, but when I work with my crew here in town, we've been together for years. So there's very little explanation of what to do. I just tell them, camera here, this is the board that we're going for. This is what I want to accomplish look-wise, bye. And I go move on to the next thing, and while they do that. If I'm out of town, it depends on which town you're in. Some towns have incredibly experienced crews that you can kind of do the same thing, but maybe a little more explanation because you're not sure that it translates without the working relationship. So you're new to each other. And they work with other people that talk differently, so you have to explain a little bit, but there's a trust factor where I can walk away and go, okay, you guys got it. And then there's times where you walk in and go, okay, I'm part of the crew now. Give me a wrench. Let's go do this. This is how we're going to do it. So it really depends on where you are. But if I was, let's say I'm working with my crew in town, and everything is perfect as far as how things work. Usually, the first person that's going to come to me and talk to me is going to be the key grip, because he wants to know exactly what big things he might have to build and have them stand by. Do I need to have a 20 by? What is, and that all comes up during the scout. It's not something I'm going to surprise him on the shoot day. So on the scout, he's going to ask, okay, what's the big things that you need here, and what do you expect to be built and on standby, and how do you want to diffuse this? Do you want to take care of the sun? Do you want to let it go? So that's the first guy that's going to have all of the questions, because he's got the most amount of stuff to move around that's big and requires manpower. So I'll usually go to him first, and I try to figure that out. I will controlling the sun for the whole day. I will let him out. Is the sun part of this shoot? Depends where the sun is and all that. So that's the first thing. Then I move on to the gaffer, because he wants to know, okay, how big are we going here? How much are we going to control ourselves? How much are we going to let it go? So he wants to know, we bring in big units that require a towing plant, like a towing generator, or can I do this with putt-putts plugging into the wall? So that all depends on the situation, of course. And again, this all comes up on the scout. It's not I don't spring on them on the day. So that's how that all gets delegated. On the shoot day, because the camera department doesn't come on scouts, and I don't think that they need to really, but on the shoot day, that's the first person I'm going to talk to is the camera department, because they need to know what we start with. what mode are we on dolly, are we handheld, are we on zooms, are we on primes, the camera settings, all that stuff. So that's the first person I talked to on set. And I don't do like a group. I don't think DPs do like a group talk per se. You know what I mean? Like get everybody on set at the same time, and this is what we're doing, guys. And you do this, you do that, and you do that, and go. You kind of go key to key and have a one-on-one talk with them about what's going on. A lot of times you do want the key grip and the gaffer together because they do, of course, work as a unit a lot. So that, at the beginning you do kind of talk together with the two guys so that they know what he's doing, so that he's ready for it. So if I'm saying I'm going to have a big 12K over here, the key grip needs to know that he's going to have to be ready to deal with that thing. So that's kind of how the delegating orders in the morning or the beginning goes. I don't carry, a lot of DPs like to carry HMEs, which are the communication devices that are kind of an open mic, that every thought in your head goes through the mic and into everybody's ears. I get the benefit of that 100%. But my biggest thing is that I want people near me so that when I talk to the director, they hear the conversation. And I don't have to translate and repeat 4 different times. Where is this guy? And we're okay, guys, this is what we're doing. But if they heard it from the director himself, there's no loss of translation of what he was asking for to what I said, especially with my silly accent. So it's just easy for them to hear from the director, and then I can just go, and this is how I want to interpret do this. So they can take his conversation and my conversation, and they know exactly what to do. When they're on HMEs, they might be, 40 feet away from me, that guy, and that guy's 30 feet away from me. Now I have to talk to them and try to explain what he said and what I want to do, and it just becomes too much for me anyway. But I would say 95% of DPs out there like the HME idea, where they can just talk into an open mic and delegate, and it does work because you can just say things and things happen. You don't have to look for people or where's this person, where's this guy, which I do suffer from a lot. I'm like, where's my where are my guys sometimes, and I do carry a walkie, but it's usually off in case I do need to get on the walkie. But that's kind of my communication style on set. Drives them crazy, but it just creates less confusion from what the director said to what I say and what should be done.
Cool. And then we talked about like camera technology that's like evolved over the years. What about like lens technology? Has that changed much?
I think and now you're talking kind of the wrong guy, because I don't get too geeked out on lenses, because I prefer not to do that. Because if I do that, then I start overthinking lensing too much, because I started doing that early in my career, and suddenly I started thinking about lenses the wrong way, and I wasn't enjoying looking at the lens and just appreciating what it is and just making decisions on that. But technology and lenses definitely has come a long way, because it's no longer a manual process. Now there's a lot of computing and machinery going on, so lenses can get smaller, and there's a lot of new glass technology involved. Like the Leica Simulux has kind of broke that mold, where you have this fast glass, and yet they're all the exact same size and the exact same circumference. Tiny little thing packing 18 to 21 elements in one little house and that big. That thing blew my mind when I saw what they did with that. And then on top of that, the focus throw was calibrated, so it's all the same for certain range for all the lenses. Preston hated that, the follow focus unit guy, but he had to create a special map for that lens. But it was just the technology was like clearly changed from decades of the same thing for lenses. But I think at the same time, you got guys like Master Build Glass that's doing things the old school way. And same with a lot of this, new glass. So there's a mixture. So there's new technology, but I think a lot of the lens manufacturers are still going the old school way to achieve the same, because at the end of the day, glass is a brush, so how technically advanced do you want to get with a brush if it's not doing the right thing anyway? So I think glass, it's getting faster and more and sharper. But it's not always used. Sometimes we use the K35s and the Pancros and the Tawas that have no sharpness or any of that going on for them. So The technology is there, and it just adds another, like you said, it just added another tool in the toolbox, but it's not the way that you have to go because they're new and modern. So I don't pay too much attention to how lenses are made or any of that stuff, because at the end of the day, I put it on and I go, that looks incredible, or it doesn't. Doesn't matter how they made it.
I'm sure there's a lot of different kind of directors. Some might be super technical and know all about how a camera works and stuff. Others will just be like, I want it to look this way. And then you're the one who has to kind of figure out and interpret what they're talking about. And like, okay, maybe he wants an Alexa, or maybe he wants a Sony that'll match with these vintage lenses, or he wants an anamorphic. So you still have to kind of keep up to date with technology and figure out and interpret a lot of these like conversations. Like, so when you do have a talk with the director about like what they want, like how do you figure out like in terms of the look they're after? Like, do you have like a set list of questions that you go through, or you just like listen to what he's saying and then do you show him examples? Like how does that whole process work?
The first thing I always ask is, what are you referring to? Because they always seen something they liked that was used, that they used that on. Okay, so what caught your eye that they used this on that you now wanted to use this setup? So I said, show me what you saw, and then I understand why they're going with this setup, or why they're asking for it. Or if they have a look that they really want to go for, they usually mentions like, this movie, the Thin Red Line, blah blah blah. I'm like, all right, well, let's try to go for that. So that's the first question I ask is like, where's this request coming from? What did you see that caught your eye that you want this? Or what was this used on that you like so much that now you want to use this? Because it comes in two different ways. They'll say, I want it to look like this, or I want to use this. So if you want to use this, why do you want to use this? What do you see that they used this on that now you want to use it? So I know what you're going for. Because you might tell me, let's use, Master Primes and Alexa, and I don't know why. And then I start shooting with it, and he's like, well, this is not what I was hoping for. Well, I don't know. This could look a million different ways, the exact same setup. And then when they say, I want it to look like this, then I have to ask, what do you see that look like this? So I understand, again, what you're going for. But I want to say it's rare that a director gets involved in that conversation. I can think of two directors that I work with regularly that we have lens talks with, because they're both photographers, and they want to be part of that conversation. Most directors, they run it by me. What do you think we should use on this? What Nick? What do you feel for this job? And I'm ready for that question usually. So before they call me and we talk about it, I've already kind of went through the process of thinking about it. So, and I'll have options. I'll say, I think I have a job coming up next week. Next week. And, the director was questioning, should we do this anamorphic? And I said, well, let's look at the locations. Does it warrant having an anamorphic lens for this? Or is it going to hamper us? Is it going to work against us? Because, anamorphic is cool, but it doesn't work everywhere. So that's part of the conversations you have is show me the locations, show me what you're going for, time of days, what are we doing? And I think, this would really work well with this format for me. If you don't like that format, I think we can do this format for this reason. And so let's pick a flavor here. And then you have to deal with the fact that agencies 99% of the time just want to shoot spherical glass. So, and they want it to look clean and new. So whenever you suggest something that's not that, you either keep it to yourself and hope they don't notice, or if it's something they're going to notice, you have to sell it to them like anamorphic, and you have to sell it to them, and you have to show them, like we talked earlier, you have to show them references of things that were shot in anamorphic that are, if you're shooting cars, you see them or car commercials that were shot anamorphic to make them go, oh, well, if they did it, we have to do it, that kind of thing. So that's, again, that conversation, like many things in this business, it can go many different ways. And part of being a DP in the situation is not getting caught with your pants down in any of those and just being ready to, go with in any way, which way the conversation wants to go.
Yes, because I'm sure there's a lot of times where the people aren't exactly like technically sound in terms of they don't really know why something looks a certain way. So if there's like a anamorphic big lens flare across the screen, they might think, what is that thing on the screen? They have to explain things.
With your lens, no? Yeah, I mean, I think thankfully nowadays, because one of the nice things about digital is that there's no longer a wizard on set. The DP is no longer this magician that everyone has to trust and don't tell me anything because you don't know. I have the meter, everyone shut up. With digital, there's a monitor, and anyone that walks by the monitor can see exactly what's going on. There's no magic to it. There's no, well, trust me, later it's going to do this. No, that's what it's doing. The craft service guy can walk by and go, that looks like crap. And he's right, So because of that, the agencies and clients are a lot more savvy about what an anamorphic is and what the flares are and what an anamorphic flare is. So they know a lot of these things now. So it's not a lot of surprises for them. So when they see it and they go, I don't want that, it's not because they don't understand it, because they've seen it before and they didn't like it and they don't want it now. They might have shot a commercial with it and go, that screwed us last time, let's not do it this time. Or, love that. We used that last time and it was a killer. So, it's that very little explaining to them nowadays. You have to sell the idea to them or why you want to use it, but they understand what it is that you're trying to sell them nowadays. So the game's a lot more even now. There's not a lot of fooling them.
Yeah, because I remember seeing like the sets back when they shot film, and they'd have like this little tiny monitor, and it's like black and white, and it's all like tiny. It's like, how did they even see what's going on? So like you said, they just had to trust the DP that he knows what he's doing and he's got the exposure right at least. But but in terms of like monitoring on set, like what kind, like do you use a lot, and like how big is the monitor? I guess it varies on every set, but like what have you found is helpful, or what is maybe not so helpful if they're too involved and they're like critiquing every little thing? Or do you feel like it's best just to show them what you're doing and let them kind of like keep that communication open?
Yeah, I mean, I want to say that's evolved and changed over the years for me. Originally, we used to go into the client monitor and make sure that thing was perfect. And I used to get very critical about what monitor showed up to the client, make sure it's a color corrected one and a professional, blah, blah, blah. And what ends up happening is that now they have the exact same tool that you have, and they can get even more critical. As much as I respect their opinions on everything, a lot of times I know why I want things to be a little darker or a little brighter, and they might not agree with it, but I'm like, you know what, you can fix this later in coloring, but I'm going to shoot it this way. And I'm not pushing too far into the edges. I'm not really going against the grain too much. I'm just, choosing a slightly brighter or darker image than what they're asking for. So I started saying, okay, just get him a consumer grade monitor that's got blown out highlights and it's got a terrible resolution. And then I can say, no, your monitor sucks, just trust me. So I'm trying to go back to like trust the wizard on set kind of thing by giving them a horrible image on the client agency, and they go, all right, we trust you, this monitor sucks and what you're doing should be all right. I do have my monitor on set, of course. It's usually a 17 OLED monitor. I like the Flanders. I'm not a fan of the Sony ones. They tend to have a huge problem for me. Some people agree with me, some people don't, but to me, they're too dark, and the color render, it has like a color layer on it that's just off, and so I've never liked them. The Flanders and other monitors, I use the Flanders. I'm sure there's other monitors that are great, but I use that one. And I usually have my DIT calibrated before the day starts, and I just go for that. I used to use a meter when I first started. Pull the meter out and go around set and check the balances and everything. But in talking to some of the camera houses, and I'm talking to a guy, when I bought a camera years ago, and I was at area here in Los Angeles, and I asked them, it's like, what do you suggest is the best way to read what the sensor is doing? Is a meter, or is it, what is it? And they all agree, it's like false color is the best way to tell exactly what the sensor is seeing. If you want to see your levels on that image, the false color is exactly what's happening, and you should go by that. And it's the best way to have continuity. If you have the highlights in a certain way in people's skin tones, you can continue that just by looking at the false color and have a continuity to it, if you want to do that. So that's what I do. I have a monitor so I can check my overall feel of this, of what's going on, and I can look at into corners and kind of decide how I want to light a room, and so I go off the monitor from that. But as far as exposure goes, it's always the false color for me. Especially because if you have 2-3 cameras, every sensor is a little different. And if a camera's a year older, that sensor is going to be cooked a little bit more. It's going to expose a little different. I've had cameras that were a stop difference and +3 green difference. So you have to go per sensor. So you pull a meter out, that's not doing you any good, really. It helps with balances. If you don't have a camera on set, the meter will help you balance the scene. But once you put the camera on, things change.
Yeah, and I guess it's hard to kind of keep an eye on the image throughout the whole process, but are you able to go into do you create a lot of the look that you wanted to create and then kind of send it to the colorist, and do you get to see any of the post-production work? Do you have any say on how it's, I mean, sometimes you would, sometimes you don't.
Yeah, that's always it's directors don't get to edit and DPs don't get to color, which to me is, but that's the world we live in the commercial world. In Europe and in all places is different, but here in the United States, the agency has full control of that stuff. So it's a little discouraging when you build a lot and do all these things on set, and then they just go, "Cool story, bro," and they do whatever they want, So I do have LUTs that I have on my DIT. I've never built my own LUT. So to be perfectly honest, I'm not good enough with the color, because with the software of coloring all this to sit there and I'll create my own looks. So what I'll do is I have the DIT pull a look up and I'll tweak that, and then we'll make that the LUT. But I'll only do that if the director says, "I'm going to be doing a director's cut out of this commercial," which happens a lot, and that's when okay, we're going to do 2 things today. We're going to shoot a commercial for the agency, and we're going to shoot a commercial for the director. And for the agency, we'll get all the shots on the boards. We'll do what they want, and we'll just throw a 709 on that and send that off to them, and they can do whatever they want. And for the director, we're going to get a bunch of extra shots they're not aware of. We're going to do extra takes for things that the director wants. I'm going to capture a few extra things when they don't know we're rolling. And then we're going to create a LUT for this. And we're going to have a director come on the van and say, "Hey, what do you think about this look for your cut?" And then we'll send that off with that drive for him or her to have for the director's cut. And then they can present that to their colorist when they're doing their cut and go, "This is the direction we were hoping to go with." So in that case, it works. And a lot of times I will be asked to be on the coloring session for that. Usually remote, but still better than nothing. And so in that case, I am involved in it. But the typical commercial, 9 out of 10 times, is so out of my hands what happens afterwards that I don't take the time to put a lot on, because I know it's not gonna fly. So I shoot a 709 and make that as middle of the road as possible for them to be able to play with it, and that way there's no after calls of it's too dark.
Yeah. So talking about the director's cut, I've talked to a few different people and listened to different podcasts and kind of found that it's a little it's a little combative in terms of there's a little conflict. The agency or the client, they don't want you to do the director's cut. They don't even want you to show it. Sometimes they'll say, "Don't put it on your website," or they'll be so it's how do you dance around that? I don't know. It's just I
want to say that fortunately for the directors I work with, the director's cuts have been so good, in our opinion, that the agency is actually sometimes excited to see them, because you gotta understand, the agency shows a commercial to the public, but the agency has to show a commercial to the client to gain accounts. So a lot of times if they show the director's cut instead, and they say, "We did this because it's better than the one they showed on TV," because they're also aware of the fact that they're coloring and editing things in a way that they rather not, because they have to make it more middle of the road commercial for everybody. So a lot of the creators in the agency, it's not that's what they like, it's just that they understand that's the game they have to play. So when they see something that's colored and edited better, they understand that it's better, because they wish they could do it that way. They just can't. They have too many cooks in that kitchen for them to be able to push in one way or the other, so they just put it in the middle. But when they see that there's a director's cut that has beautiful color, a beautiful edit, a beautiful story behind it, and it sells the product even better because it's more emotional and more visual, they of course gonna go, yeah, that's great. Makes us look better. So I've had those where we do a director's cut, and then I'll work with the agency again on a same campaign with a different director, and they'll make the noise like, we love that director's cut from last time. It was amazing. Like, I wish we could do that on this one. They can't, but they say that. So it hasn't been too much of a combative issue in my experience so far.
Yeah, because I'm wondering, like, what is it about, like, certain things that makes it a director's cut? Like you said, it's they're able to change the color how they want it. Maybe they have extra shots. Like, what kind of shots would they want to put in, for example, that the agency or the client wouldn't want? Like, is it B-roll of a certain, like maybe a person or a thing, or like, do they change the time, like the running time, or they keep it around the same time? Like, just trying to, what makes a director's cut different from the one that goes on TV?
A lot of the times, you nailed that. A lot of times it's the running time. The directors would tend to try to go for a 60, which is very rare. You see a 60 on TV. It's usually 30s or 15s. Nowadays, 5s. So a lot of times it is the running time. They just get to put in every shot they wanted to put in the commercial and edit their own version of the commercial. And that's the other difference, is the way it's edited. They use different shots. They use different angles. They use different takes. Because the agency might like the way this line was set in a commercial, but a director might think it was cheesy. So they'll use the more slightly better acted, more emotional version of that same line. Or they might leave that line entirely out of the commercial and they just use a non-speaking version of that actor doing something. So they're almost unrecognizable from the one or the other when you watch the director's cut and you watch the agency cut. A great example is that Bronco spot that you brought up, the Ford Bronco spot. There's an agency version out in public, and there's a director's cut. And when you see both of them, the color and the edit are very different, and they're two completely different spots. But they were the exact same shoot, the exact same product and actors and crew on it. But the director spent a lot of time in the editing bay, editing her own commercial for that. And then there was a color session for it that was completely separate from the color session for the agency. And there was a different VO even. Like the voiceover by Bryan Cranston was completely different from the one that was used by the agency. So you could say it was two different commercials. Directors just want to show you a cool commercial about that car, which I personally feel works better, But then again, I'm not in the agency, so I don't know what they go through in the creative process that makes them end up in that direction. Because when you talk to them one-on-one, they get it. They understand what's going on. They fully understand that what ends up happening in the commercials is silly, but so there must be something going on in those meeting rooms. That's what happens, because they get it when you talk one-on-one with them.
How did you do, like, on the bike shot? It's like underneath, looking at the front wheel. Like, is this like a GoPro, or like, what is that?
We did have GoPros on this one. That one, I believe, was an FX3 with a Sony lens on it. We mounted that to the down tube of the bicycle, right by the chainring, facing forward. We did have some GoPros when it was facing the cyclist, the lady pedaling. So we did have one for that, because otherwise it was too much weight for it and it would just bounce around too much. But the one down there, we could do a solid mount to the down tube, and it was it was like maybe that big of a total package, so it wasn't too bad. But we wanted the wide scope of things. If you shoot the bicycle wheel, you kind of lose scope of where they're bicycling. So we wanted to make sure we saw the trees going by and we saw the dirt underneath, so you get a sense of speed. So that's what we used for that one, and that's all done. Forget how they mounted that one, but I think it was pretty down and dirty, zip ties and hose clamps and stuff like that. Sometimes you can have the most expensive grip crew in the world and it comes down to hose clamps. So, yeah.
So did you match that with the Venice? Was that, yeah. Have you seen the Creator? Like, they shot the whole thing on the FX3. Yeah, it's like showing on IMAX. So it's crazy. They could film it's an $80 million movie on little tiny $4,000 camera.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed a big part of the discussions I have with people sometimes is, Netflix for many years won't let you use an Alexa because it's not 4K. I'm like, but it is. So it was, anyway, I'm going off into the distance here. But yeah, you can use any camera for anything, really. You can put a GoPro. Most FPV shots you saw at first were all GoPros. All the FPV shots on that commercial were all GoPros. That was in a Phantom at the time. And they look fine because it's such a fast movement thing. It's such a quick cut. You're not sitting on it. You're not pausing it. You're not, you know what I mean? It's about the movement. It's not about the quality of the image so much, which sounds like a horrible thing for a DP to say, but it's the truth. You have to know where your battles are. Sometimes it's about the movement and it's not about the image. And when it's about that, you can use anything you want. That bicycle shot, if I put a Sony Venice on there with a Master Prime, it wouldn't make a difference. It would just make it that much heavier and silly to mount. But you would not go, oh, that shot looked terrible. It had bad definition and color and sharpness. You would not be able to tell. So you have to know when it's okay for you to use smaller, less refined cameras because the shot makes it okay. So you can use a GoPro if you know what the shot is. Don't use a GoPro sitting on someone's face for 30 seconds. That's gonna go horribly wrong.
It's the same thing with like performance. Like I know, like I was talking to another guy and like the client might be watching and think that looks fake, but then you have to remind them it's only going to be a quick little cut. Like this is like a fast cut here, fast cut, like maybe catch a smile, catch a movement, like little action here and there. Once it all comes together, it doesn't have the same feeling. Same with like the speed. Like I see you doing like different speed variations. Are you like planned like, oh, we're going to make this shot slow motion, so let's shoot it at a higher frame rate, or that we want this car to go slower? Do you do like lower frame rates and like mess around with the shutter speed and that kind of thing?
And you have to be careful with that because if you go slow motion, I tend to try to stick to 48 and 96. The reason for that is because you can actually speed that back up. If you cut the frames out, if you do uneven numbers like 36 or 50 or whatever, then you can't speed it back up. You're kind of stuck at that slow motion for the shot. So if later they want to ramp it or they don't like the slow motion, they're kind of stuck with it. So if you do 48 frames, they can make that 24 and they can make it 12. And if you do 96, they can make that 48 or 24. I mean, for 96 to 24 is going to be kind of crappy looking, but doable. So when I do slow motion, I try to stick to those numbers so that it's got some flexibility. And if it's the kind of commercial where you're going to be doing some ramping, you want same thing. You want to stick to 48 or 96 so you can ramp up and down on the shot. But I don't tend to I don't tend to do the 12 frames and 6 frames thing to make things look faster. If I do that, I might do 20 frames just to give it a little edge to speed, but nothing too obvious because a lot of things have to happen. The trees move funny, and the hair moves funny and all that, so it kind of gives it away. So you don't want to go too crazy with that. If I might do 20 at the most from 24 just to give it a little more, but that's if you're driving a car on a road and you can only do 15 miles an hour. You want it to look like it's 25 miles an hour, so you might go a little faster.
And then in terms of like getting kind of coverage on a certain scene or like an entire commercial, are you trying to capture as much as you can for the director and the editor because that you're not editing it like somebody else is editing it, so the more you can provide options for them, the better, rather than having an ego and just saying, I only want this shot. Like, I don't want to give them anything else. Like, do you think as a director of photography working in the commercial business, that is the way to go in terms of having the attitude of providing more rather than less?
Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know, however you want to look at it, it's not too much our call of how many shots we give him. The director is going to kind of make that decision for us. He's going to say, because he's in charge of what we shoot. He's going to say, we're going to shoot this shot now. It's not too much. I can definitely suggest things like, hey man, we should get this. And the director might go, you're right, let's get that. But I can't say like, okay, now that we done that shot, now we need to go do this shot for the agency. The director's going to look at me like I'm out of my mind. Like, who are you to, why are you making shots up now? So a lot of times it's going to be their call of what we need. And I tend to tell directors like that are kind of getting started or new to a certain genre of commercials. It's like, because if you're in the comedy world, absolutely get as many takes and versions as possible, because that's how comedy works. I'm not a comedian director, so I have no idea too much of the ins and outs, but the good ones tend to do a ton of takes, and out of that, the comedy comes out. But in our world, when you give them too many options, they're going to tend to use the one you don't like. So try to stick to your guns of what you know is right and just shoot that. If you give them too many options, the one you like is probably going to get buried. And you're going to go, why did they use that? Well, because you gave it to them, you know? So I tend to say, don't do too much of that. If it's a kind of thing where it's a content thing where they need a bunch of stuff, where they do need a bunch of stuff, and absolutely shoot 360, shoot it all, give it all to them. But if you do have a strong opinion about how the story of a commercial, if there's much of a story to be told, is to be told, stick to your guns up as far as what the shots need to be for that. Because if you give them a bunch of options just to give them options, that's how the bad edits come out. You're like, wow, that edited that completely wrong. Well, you gave them a bunch of options, and that's what happens, you know?
Yeah, because I've done projects before where I didn't edit it, and then they'll use like an out of focus shot, and you're like, oh, no, it's too late now. Like, it's already on YouTube or whatever. It's like, oh boy.
We did a job, and I won't say which one it was or who it was or anything, but it was a single shot, and the car just kind of cross frame and did one thing. And it was a very tricky operating situation where there's nothing going on. All of a sudden, this thing comes into frame, and you have to catch it and go with it. And it's full frame, it's bumper to bumper. So it's like you have to catch it, you have to keep it in frame, and it goes away. And you know, and the arm car's moving, they're going a different direction, and it's very specific zoom out to it, and so a lot of things going on. And we did a bunch of takes of this until we got it exactly how we wanted it. And we were there all day doing this shot. And when you watch the commercial, they use the first take. And I know it's the first take because I remember what was wrong with the first take. Because I'm like, oh, wow, that's going to happen a lot. Let's correct that so that we don't do that again. And that's the take they used. And they used that take because I hung too long on the window where you could see the driver. And they liked the fact that they could stick on the driver for that long. But the car got chopped in half. So I'm like, what? We're selling cars, first of all, you know, and it just looks wrong when you chop the car up like that for the whole shot. So that happens. It's like, you gotta be careful what you give them because they'll use the wrong thing. And again, that's not giving an options. They just use the wrong take, but it's an example of how, you know, they'll just use completely the wrong thing sometimes.
Yeah, I saw a behind the scenes. I can't remember what it was for, but the idea was they wanted to do like one take of like the scene, like a master shot. And then like somebody was on saying, oh, do you sure you don't want to get like a close up? And they're like, no. And they knew like as soon as they get like the cutaways, they're kind of giving up that artistic integrity of like, we know it's going to get butchered in the edit if we give them the pieces. So let's just shoot it how we want, and then they don't have any options to edit it. That's all they have. So sometimes, yeah, I guess it's probably hard to just like do your own, like delete the take, delete, and then here's the one good one, or at least mark them, you know.
I have a typical story of what that was, and this is I'm only going to tell the story so that people understand how this happens, but there was an ESPN commercial of a couple driving down the road in Hidden Valley. It's a big, beautiful farm road here in LA. And the director had a very specific vision for this shot. He wanted the camera to start on the driver, pan to the passenger, keep panning across to the front of the windshield, and pan back to the driver into a two shot. So it was like a 360 plus. So start here, move there, go around to the front, back to the driver, and then end up on a two shot. And he wanted to be inside the car. Right, so we needed to be on the dashboard inside the windshield because he wanted to see out through the window. He wanted to notice the window. So we're like, how are we going to do this? So we ended up taking this car to the grip shop and drilling a hole through the roof and creating our own plexiglass for it. So it looked crystal clear plexiglass. So it looked like a windshield, but we could drill into it. And we had a motorized head with a periscope that we could 360 this thing remotely. And we had a remote system set up that went all the way up to the trunk. And then we had all this set up in the trunk so the director could sit back there and direct without being seen through with the camera, because the camera was going to see back, towards the truck. It was a Jeep Cherokee, I remember. So we had this whole thing done. And it took 2 days of pre-rigging this car. And we went out to the road, and Mark, the director, this is awesome. You guys nailed it. Let's go out in there and do it. We ran the car back and forth. We did about 3-4 hours of this. Nailed it. Beautiful. We were like high-fiving. Agency comes up and goes, how would we do 2 hostess trays, one on the right, one on the left, just to cover her and to cover him for those lines, just in case? And the director goes, no way, man. I am not doing that. You will use that take. And they're like, we promise you, blah, blah, blah. So he goes, if you use that take, I will never work with you guys again. And this is a big director. I will never work with you guys again, blah, 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 blah. And this is a guy that has a big opinion, and he's known. And so I can't believe he agreed to it, but he did. So we put the hostess trays on and we shot it. And I don't have to tell you the rest of the story and what happened, but it's exactly what they used. It was one shot, the camera goes to the windshield, and they cut to the hostess tray and the hostess tray. And man, when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, this director's probably just threw a TV in the trash can. All the work that we did, So you have to be careful what you agree to do. It's like, stick to your guns.
Yeah, it's like the worst thing when you're like, I'm going to do a one-shot music video, and then they cut up like even 1 or 2 shots. It's like, oh, that's just defeats the whole purpose. Yeah, it's like we did 15 takes and you just cut it up and you're like, what the hell?
That comes up in pre-production talks. Like, promise me you guys are not going to ask me to do anything different. I'm not going to do a cutaway. Promise here on this table right now. It's kind of what it starts, yeah.
Yeah, because I guess that comes down to like expectations. Like, you don't want people to expect something from you and then have a different opinion after the fact, especially if like everybody's an expert after the shoot day, but the pre-production, they don't say anything, and then after you should have got a shot of this or that or the other. It's like, you didn't say anything back then. So yeah,
there's a lot of opinions on set. Once they start seeing it, it's like, oh, it would be great. It's like, well, let's get what we came here to do, and then we have time,
Yeah, the plan.
Yeah.
Stick to the plan.
Stick to the plan, exactly.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff on your website, but if you have, there's a Honda commercial with a bunch of like CGI blue stuff coming through, and then motorcycles going past, and the camera kind of circles around the whole, and then there's like transitions to other scenes. I guess how did you do that?
That's another one that comes up a lot, and most people think that the cars are CG or something. That's all practical. It's all on car. The only CG part is that blue splash at the beginning, but everything else the funny thing about that one is the director didn't have a very dialed-in plan when we showed up to shoot it. I thought he was going to show up and go, this is how we achieve this. But he showed up and said, how do you think we should do this, Nick? I'm like, oh boy, okay, that's going to be interesting, because it was a very tricky one. So the short of it is we divided the Honda car into 4 pieces of pie. So this is the rear 3/4, this is the left, and rear 3/4 right, front 3/4, front 3/4. So we just divided into 4 pieces of pie, and we said, okay, what happens in this movement, what happens in this movement, and what happens in this movement? So we would start the shot from this movement and go, okay, how do we introduce a motorcycle? And we had to think about the size of the car and how to introduce a motorcycle into the same frame, because the size of the car had to remain more or less the same throughout the entire move. So we had to marry ourselves to a frame of the car from the very beginning and be careful that it didn't screw us down the road. Like, how do we fit 2 cars now? So it became a lot about framing the car off on one side of the frame to leave empty spaces so that other things could be introduced. So every time we framed and we went around, I was always very conscious of leaving a side of the frame, either the right side, as I pivoted around, to leave a section of the frame empty for another thing to enter the frame. And then we would introduce that car into the frame and play with that. But it was one of those things when we finished the job, is like, did we get it? Is it going to work? But thankfully, you have a visual effects supervisor on set You want to have those guys on set. You don't want to just making phone calls and checking in with them. You want them on set because they know what they can and can't do. And so he's on set and he's going, all right, I can't fit a car in there. I can't fit a splash. I can't marry these two shots unless these two things match. So you redo the shot and you go, okay, now we got to match this movement from this movement. The roof line has to match, or the wheels need to be in the same place. So that kind of stuff. But it's you'll be surprised how much of that is on the day figuring it out. It's not just like 2 weeks of planning on a conference table with computer models and 3D imaging and all that. None of that happens. It's you show up on set and you go, okay, what are we doing? So a lot of that comes down to experience, trusting you guys, and everybody there has been doing this a long enough time that we understand the parameters. And so you get your little matchball cars on the ground, and you get your little arm car figurine on the side, and you start kind of trying to dial that in on the ground and start playing with that. But it was all done practically. There's none of that. The only thing that was CG on that was that blue splash. Everything else was married together practically, which is tricky.
Yeah, it looks like you kind of went around and then kind of they matched the shots with a little bit of digital zoom in and out, but yeah, it's like okay, we got 30 seconds, like how long does this move take? And then luckily I guess at the end you have like the hero shot of the car, so you can kind of make it a little shorter, and that's because it's not like a motion control rig where you can just set the timings and then do the same thing in maybe they'll do that one day, but it'll be pretty hard with a car. You'd have to have a train track or something. And
one of the thoughts that we had very early on that one was to put the arm on the actual picture car. So not on an arm car, but take it off the arm car, put it on the roof of the picture car. And so we'll go around the car and do that. The problem with that is that, number one, there's a ton of work to be done to remove the arm from the shot, because you will see the arm a lot of times. The other problem we had is the arm couldn't be long enough to get out far enough to get a full frame shot of the car the whole time. You could get it here or there, but not the whole time. And the other one is that we couldn't get out of the way of the other cars that needed to be in the shot, that we just smash into the arm a lot of times. So that's one of the things you think about, is like, okay, we can do this, and just obviously you can remove the arm, but then it just introduces a whole bunch of other things. So you end up just going as simple as possible. A lot of times, the simpler you do the things, the easier it is to pull it off. And so just take an arm car and drive around it and just try to match, And that's what we did. And we, a lot of grease pencil monitors, a lot of that going on.
Yeah, no, it looks great. Have you seen the Inspire 3? Like now it can do like tracking in the air, kind of like a motion control. So you can do like a time lapse of the day, and then it goes to night, and it will be in the exact same spot. So yeah, I don't know if it would be easy to do a circle around a moving car, but they can do super wide stuff. But yeah, someone will do it one day. But yeah, it seems like a lot of those super complex moves are all CGI nowadays. So to do it practically is like, it's impressive, and people can kind of tell when something's real and when it's not. But the more the technology improves, the less and less it's going to be able to tell.
People ask me how things were done because it tells me that they know it's not CG. Like, oh yeah, okay, so that's not CG. How do you do it? So I enjoy that part of it, And the more the FX guys will say, well, just do it in post. Like, well, how can we do it practically? Can we? Let's just try to pull it off. Because when you do it in post, it takes the magic away. People will know, like, oh, CG, because you can't hide that stuff. So I do enjoy when we do those jobs, and they're nerve-wracking when you're on set and like, are we going to pull this off? But when you do, it's very satisfying because you did something that people have questions about.
Do you ever work with cars that aren't released yet, and they kind of just say you got to replace the body with CGI? Like,
those are what they call red code cars, which are unreleased cars that they don't want anyone to see yet. So they're either not out at all. You have to use a different car and CG the car over that, or they're unreleased car that's practical. And you have it on set, but you can't let anyone see it. So they drive around with these tarps on them, this custom-made plastic covers that have like fake windows and fake headlights, and they just drive them around, and then they have a bunch of bodyguards around ready to kill anybody. And it's silly, but it tends to always be German companies that come to LA to shoot unreleased cars, and I don't know why they do that. Go somewhere in the middle of nowhere. why are you coming to PCH to shoot an unreleased Porsche? You're out of your mind. But they do it all the time.
Yeah, because everybody has an iPhone nowadays. They can just quickly pull it out.
Yeah, and and then they get mad that why are you shooting here? It's like, why are you shooting here? We just put the job, man.
And then there's another one, Ford trucks. Like, I guess they always want to show like work, like sawing wood or like cutting stuff, like that kind of F-150. Like, is that kind of part of the brief, pulling a boat? Like, they always want to show what the built tough type thing they want to show how.
The one you're watching is a director's cut. The one that they showed you don't see any of that. I mean, almost none of it. It's just car, cut to maybe a guy carrying a piece of wood, car, maybe a guy sawing, and that's it. So the one you're seeing is the director cut from Britton Caillouette, who's an amazing visual storyteller. He does amazing director's cuts. So that whole spot that you're watching there is his personal cut and color on that spot, and that's one of the ones that I work with him later on, and they're like, we love that director's cut. That was awesome. I was like, all right, cool. Like, they were super happy with that.
Because, yeah, I'm sure there's different markets for different cars. Like, each car serves, a purpose, and they try to show, exactly what audience it's for in terms of, like, the capabilities, I guess, like how much it can tow. And do they have, like, a checklist of certain things that you kind of try to achieve in terms, I guess, casting as well? Like, and then, like, if it's a family car, they will have like a family jumping in the back and driving around.
Well, it used to be a lot less of that because car technology there wasn't that much going on in the car. So it was about what the car was about. This car takes you to great places. So this truck can plow through the mud really cool. So, the Chevrolet Rock commercial and all that stuff. It was just this car in the environment. But nowadays, cars have so much going on with them that there's a long list of things you have to check off by the end the commercial's over. So you got to show the power plugs in the back of the truck. You got to show the office pull down on the F-150. You got to show that the screen is 1725 inches long or whatever you want to say. You got to show that it's got perforated ventilated seats. You got to show that they recline this way or that way. There's so much going on with these cars nowadays that they want you to pick off all these things, especially with trucks. Not so much with cars, but with pickup trucks, they're really into exactly how much stuff that's stuffed into this thing. And so you spend a lot of time doing this little insert shots of all these things, and they want to make sure you see them. So because they're all competing with each other, how much stuff they throw in these trucks, and they want to make sure that everyone knows that they got one new thing on them. Now you can power your house out of this truck, and they can't. So there's a lot of that. You spend a lot more time doing that than actually shooting the truck, which is a little too much.
Yeah, they always want to show the Apple AirPlay, like the screen. It's like, yeah, it's hard to like just shoot screens all the time. It's like the same thing.
It's like, I think we can all agree that cars have Apple CarPlay. Can we stop doing that shot? It's that kind of thing. And so I think we all understand that pickup trucks have a power plug in the back. We're good. That stuff. But, they got to check those things off.
That's like a list. Like, do you get like a list from the agency, or like, I guess it's up to the director to tell you what to film?
Boards, there'll be a shot of the things they want to show. So there'd be a boarded out shot of the power station in the back, or it'd be a shot boarded out of the screen. So you're gonna have to do these shots. And every now and then someone will come in, oh guys, by the way, we forgot. Can we get a shot of the knob in the middle that does the thingamading? We're like, okay, let's do that shot. So they'll throw in things that they forgot, or are new that they need to mention. And a lot of that comes from the client saying, I need to make sure that my car is shown doing this. I'm like, all right.
And then in terms of like time frames, how long do you get? Like, do they call you up like a week before, or a month before, or day before? Like, I'm sure it varies.
Varies a lot. Yeah, I've been at home thinking I'm off for the next 2 days, and then I'm off to Detroit the next day, and not last second. But I would say the standard would be a couple weeks that I get put on hold for a job. They send me the creative the agency creative, the director boards, and then at some point they'll book me for the job after, they do their thing where they pick a DP between them. And at that point, I'll have a talk with the director. That usually happens about a week before the shoot, and we go through everything, how all the specifics of what he's thinking or what he wants, and desires and stuff. So that would be the typical timeline. A couple of weeks on the whole. A couple of weeks out, you're on hold. About a week into it, you're booked. Then you can make a phone call with the director, and then that's kind of the regular timeline.
And then in terms of like gear, do you hire the gear, or do you tell the production to get it, or do you buy your own gear? Like, what do you recommend? I guess because it changes so often, it's better to not buy.
I would say if you do buy gear, don't buy it for you to use. Buy it because you have a relationship with the camera house, and you can leave it at the camera house for them to sub-rent for you, and you make a cut of that, 60, whatever arrangement you have. That's the only way I would suggest anyone owns gear, is if it can be like a co-signing thing with a camera house. Because if you own the gear yourself, and I guess it really depends on where you are in the industry, because there's guys that are hired because they own gear, right? So that's that segment of the industry where they're doing a lot of content for smaller companies or big companies doing smaller content for smaller audiences, maybe local markets and local dealers and stuff like that. So those guys benefit a lot from owning all the gear because they are a package deal. They're not charging to be a director or a DP. They're charging to be the van with all the stuff in it. So for those guys, absolutely buy whatever is the hottest item right now and just make sure to get rid of it before it's not hot anymore. But if you get to the point where you're working on the things that I'm working on, owning gear is, to me, and there's guys that would disagree with me, to me it's a handicap, because now you're kind of under pressure of using your own gear, right? Because you got to pay it off and you got to make money off of it. And to me, being one of the higher paid people in the crew and also owning all the gear, to me is to me is a little bit too much. Leave that. The assistants have a lot of gear, and they depend on this gear to make a living more than I do, because their rates are completely different from mine. And their rates haven't gone up that much, so the gear is a nice supplement. So if you start buying a bunch of gear, you kind of taking money out of their hands that they need more than you do, really. So I don't like to own gear for that one reason. The other reason, because again, like I said, it handicaps you. You have to kind of use your gear. So if you want to use a Sony Venice, but you own an Alexa LF, and you know that Sony will be a better camera, you're like, well, I'm using an Alexa because I'm gonna make money off of that. I need to pay off that loan, whatever, So it's a handicap. Same with glass. If you buy a set of I don't know, whatever, Leicas or whatever, now you're the Leica guy because you're not going to use something else, right? You just spent $200,000 on a set of glass. So guess what you're using, right? So I say if you do buy those things, make sure that the best way to do it is to have a relationship with a camera house that's going to keep it in the camera house. You get to use it when you want to, but when you're not using it, it's rented out to other people that want to use your gear. So that makes sense. And then you're not tied to using your gear. You want to use something else, you're free to do it. And it lets you, you can go and allows you to go different camera houses too. Like I want to go to Panavision for this because they have the great anamorphic and vintage glass and some of the amazing new stuff. Or I want to go to Auto Nemens because that's the camera house that is great for commercials and has all the cool, professional service and stuff, blah, blah, blah. So you're free to roam when you don't own gear, And I think it's a better political move with production too. When a producer hears that they're paying you your rate, and on top of that, you're getting this much more from all the camera gear. Some producers, it might leave a bad taste in their mouth. Like, how much does this guy need to make? You know what I mean? So, especially when they know that the crew also has gear that now they can't put on because you own all this stuff. So, and they understand that dynamic very well because they deal with the crew and their gear and their rates all the time. And then the crew will go, well, no, the DP owns all the gear, so I don't get to put it on my crop. So I'm just working for my time card today, which is like, oh, okay. So for those many reasons, I don't own gear. And that comes from being an assistant that owned a lot of gear and work with DPs that had gear and didn't have gear. I didn't take the work from DPs that own gear. I just didn't want to work with them because it was like, you're cutting my salary.
Yeah, I'm sure like over the years, like the amount of time spent buying and selling gear, it's kind of up and down because something new comes out and then you got to get rid of the old one. And then, so it's better to be open and like use, like you said, use the best tool for the job rather than using the tool that you already have, because then you'll also, all your stuff will look the same and then you won't have experience using it. Have you used this camera? And you're like, no, I haven't used that one. Whereas, so there's a lot of benefits to, I guess, not owning the gear.
Yeah. And like I said, if you do own it knowing that you're not dependent on renting it, on using it yourself to pay for it. That you have a camera house backing you up, and they're sending it out on TV shows and commercials, and it's working. But I had a mini LF that I kept at a camera house. I never saw that camera. I think I saw it once. I saw it twice, when I picked it up from Mary, and once when I used it on a job in a 2-year period.
And did it pay itself off? Like, did it start earning money?
It did. It paid itself off and then made profit, which is great. And I never used it because, I was at a camera house that just sent it off on a TV show every season, and it was gone. So it wasn't like I was trying to own gear because I believe in this tool so much. It's because I was buying gear that I knew was in high demand, and it was a good investment. So that's the way to think about gear when you're shooting, is don't buy it because you think you're going to use it and make more money. You should buy it because it's a good investment and it's going to work by someone else using it. So it's almost like a it's almost unrelated to your job.
It's like an asset versus a liability. So to have something that you can rent out, like a rental home, it's like you got renters in there rather than just having it sit there and you having to pay the mortgage. But in terms of the camera stuff, like, do you still own that RELF, or did you sell that? Like, is there like a cap? Like, do they still use those cameras? Like, would that still be a profitable thing, or would it be like the next thing now, like the Sony Venice or?
No, I think the Alexa LF is still used a lot. It really comes down to where the S35 came out, so that became like the hot new kid in the block. But it really came down to people being really excited to be able to shoot 4K Super 35 and use the old glass, because with the LF you couldn't shoot 4K Super 35. It was, I forget what the resolution would be. And so a lot of people were not able to use this old glass anymore. They were tied to large format glass, and there wasn't that much of it around. So people were kind of like bored of using the same 4 sets of glass for the camera, that kind of thing, right? But I saw that the day they announced these Area 35. I was like, okay, I'm not going to take a risk that this LF becomes, sitting on the shelf. So I got rid of it that day. I put it up for sale.
How much like would you buy it for and then sell it for? I'm sure there's a big difference.
4 people were trying to get rid of it. I sold it for the exact same, I think maybe a couple grand less than what I paid for it.
Well, that's good. Yeah.
So that's the trick to it, is you want to sell things before people are trying to get rid of things. You don't want to keep a camera so long that is now a camera that's 20 of them for sale. When I put mine out for sale, there was like, I think there were 2 online for sale maybe, and I just priced it like just below that, and it was gone.
Because I've seen them, they cost like $100,000 brand new, and then I've seen some, like, I don't know if it's an LF or what it is, but it's like RE Alexa Mini for like $30,000 now. So it's kind of like 70% less.
Plastic, I think you can get for about $30,000 now, or 50, sometimes even $20,000. And then there's the Alexa 4.3. I think it was after that. I think that one you can get for about $40,000 or something like that. But the LFs, they cost $85,000 new, and I think they still sell for about $80,000 or $75,000 maybe, if you want to get rid of it cheap. So they hold their value because they're still it's faster to buy a used than to wait for one from Mary. That's the thing. It's like, you want to buy a camera now, you need to buy a used, because you're going to be waiting a long time for it to come from Mary, because there's so much demand they can't build it fast enough.
And then, I guess if you can finance it or something and then rent it out, like it's like a business trying to make money off camera stuff. But yeah, that's interesting. I'd like to do that one day. But it's like a gamble, if they bring out a new one, you're like,
you gotta buy it when a new camera is announced. Don't buy something that's been out for a few months or a few years, because now, here's the thing: if you're trying to put it in a camera house, you gotta get it in there before they get their cameras. You know what I mean? And that way your camera is like, in demand, because it's one of the very few ones in stock. If you buy a camera 6 months or a year down the road from release, that camera house is already stocked up on it, and your camera's going to sit at the bottom of that pile.
And the camera house has like the proper insurance and everything, so you don't have to worry if it gets stolen or broken. Yeah.
I still have my own insurance for those things just because they ask you to do that. But when they rent the camera out, it's completely as if it's their camera. There's no talk about this being a co-rent on it. So it's their contract, their everything.
And then what happens when you want to like use it for a job? Do you have to pay them?
No, I just take it out. I don't use it. I said I'm going to take my camera.
Give it here. Yeah.
Do a job through that camera house with my camera. They just give you the full rental. They don't take a cut, which is unusual. But a good professional camera house that has a big business, they tend to have more friendly agreements with the people because they want you there.
Yeah. So what are your goals for like the future? Like, what do you want to accomplish?
I want to get back into narrative. I was staying away from it once because I was trying to build myself up as a DP, and two because I have two little kids and I want to be home more. So doing features just doesn't work for that. But now they're older, they're in school. I don't need to be around as much. Of course, I still have to be around, but not as much. So I would love to get back into narrative, get back into shooting features. I say that now, but I'm sure the second I step on a set, I'm like, what am I doing here? But I would love to do that. I've done some shorts. I love doing documentaries. That's something I would love to do even more of. And in the commercial world, you always want to step up on the ladder. You want to be the guy that gets called up to do this level of work and that level of work and so on. So, and you never know what level of work you're at. Like only people know that. But I would love to be able to be called for, like Mark Jenkinson, for example, is a guy that I would love to work with. That's like another step on a ladder when you start working at that level of guys that do that level of car work. So that's the kind of stuff I would love to somehow figure out how to step up to that one, And a lot of it is, doing the work that gets their attention, and a lot of it is, had been thrown in the conversation when the time is right. So a lot of things have to happen.
Yeah. So in terms of like that, how do you like network and like figure out how to meet a director or get on their radar? Like maybe earlier on in your career, like were you doing some of that, like reaching out? Like do you ever send like messages or emails just to kind of say, hi, how's it going? Like I want to take you to lunch. Like how do you like meet the right people at the right time?
Yeah, I'm horrible at that. And my wife hates me for that because she's a very networky type person. And she's like, why don't you get out there more? I don't know how much luck, how blessed I am, but I've never even had a resume printed out or a business card. And I'm not saying that's the right way to do it at all. It's just so happened that I haven't had to do those things because I think I've been in this business too long. And so I have a little bit of name recognition from being an assistant, an operator, and I've been around for that long. So when you go into a production office, they tend to kind of already know who I am a little bit. So I'm not surprised that I'm not trying to be introduced. So I don't have to network myself. Like, I know that guy. I worked with him for 15 years when he was doing this, blah, blah. So because of that, I think I haven't had to network too much. But there's a lot of new people coming up in the industry, and you have to somehow get on their radar. And there's social media, and there's a lot of people that do that, the social media thing where they just constantly DMing people or tagging or whatever. I don't do that because I don't think most people want that done to them. You know what I mean? Like they don't want that approach. So I fully rely on my work and my agent. Obviously, DPs have agents, and that's kind of their job. I fully rely on my work and my agent doing the majority of the work of getting my name out there. Whether I would be working more or would I be working with the Mark Jenkinsons of the world if I was more networky and playing more golf with people, I don't know. I don't play golf. That's the problem. And so on that side of the advice world, I don't have any advice of what the right thing to do is because I don't do those things. And I don't know if that's working for me or not. I'm working and I'm busy. So because of that, I tend to think that just doing good work and having a good attitude on set and being professional will get most of that done for you. Your name will get out there. You're getting people's ears that way, I think. Because it is a small world. You work with this DP, with this director. That means you work with this producer, you work with this agency, you work with this production company. That's a lot of people. You heard your name, and if you do a good job and you're professional on set and you're a guy that they want to work with, that's just you just network that whole field right there, just by doing that job. So now that producer is gonna go work with another director, and I get a lot of work that way. I get a lot of work from producers that work with me and go, I want you to meet this director because I love the way you worked here. You're great on set, professional. We like the way things looked. I need you to work with this guy now. And so now you get a call from this director. So I think that's, to me, it comes down to that. Now you can network, you can do a social media thing, all that stuff. And I think it works for a lot of guys. But I think at the end of the day, if you put in the work and you're professional, and I think that will do most of the lifting for you.
And then in terms of like the agency, like your agent, like what exactly do they do and how does that process work? Like, do they take care of your like calendar and the negotiations, and they find you work and they kind of like take care of all that kind of business side of things?
To us all the time. Yeah, they well, the way it works is, for example, when I was an assistant, I didn't need to have an agent because everyone knew me, and I would just say, I'm focus pulling now. And that was it. I was a focus puller. Whether I could do it or not was up to me, but that's what it was. And people go, okay, that's what you are. Was an operator, the same thing. Once you move up to DP, it's no longer that. Now you need to have someone get your name out to people that don't know anything about you. So the agent, when a production company calls and says, we have this job, and it could be one of two things. We want this DP for that job. Can you get him from us? And they'll either go, yeah, here he is. Or they go, he's not available, but I have these other 2-3 guys that do very similar work that I think you will like. And so they'll go, okay, cool. We'll present these guys and see which one they like. Or the other thing that happens is they go, hey, we have this project. Who do you suggest? And an agent will go, okay, I see what the boards are. I think these 3 or 4 guys would be great for that. And then they take those back and they make a selection. So that's what the agent does. It just gets your name out in places that you would never get your name in. You know what I mean? So I would have met 90% of the directors I've met, not 90, 70% of the directors I met, I would have never met if it wasn't for my agent putting my hat in the ring. You know what I mean? Because he said, I think this guy would be great for that. Or, this DP is not available. How about Nick? Or I see your project. I think Nick would be great for that. I would never be a part of the conversation without my agent. So that's why you need an agent. And a lot of guys out there are freelance and they do a lot of hustling and a lot of work for them. They get a lot of work, and I kudos to them because I couldn't do it. I'm just not that person. I'm not like, go get people and, take them out to lunch and do this and that. I can't. It's not me. So I need an agent. I need to chill out and do my thing, and he does his thing.
Yeah, buy him a Rolex and send him a gift basket. But how do you, like, what advice do you have for somebody who wants to get an agent? Like, how do you get in touch with these agents, and how do you impress them enough to get them to represent you? Well,
you have to pick something you're strong at. Again, take my advice with a grain of salt because everyone's different. But I think, and I just had this conversation with a young DP director that was asking the same question for me, and we went out to a lunch beer thing because he wanted to pick my brain about that. And I think it comes down to you have to pick your lane and make sure your reel is strong in that lane. So he wanted to get into car shooting business more, right? And I said, well, looking at your reel, there's some cars, but nothing here says you're a car guy. All right. Now I know you have the footage at home to make a car reel. So go home and just put a car reel together and make that strong. And also go out and shoot spec shoots. Now, spec shoots are not always a good idea. But if you know exactly what you need to make your reel strong with, like you know exactly what you're trying to be seen as, then you can concentrate on making a couple of spec reels that's specifically that. So I told him, go out there and shoot awesome car shots. Go to Coyote Lake, go to LA Mirage, get pay for their arm car. Those guys will help you out. If they're not working, they will help you out on their rates on their rentals because they want to meet new people. So if they're not working, the car's parked, they'll come out and work with you. Go out there and shoot cars. And more importantly, if you're trying to be a car DP, shoot pack shots. You know what a pack shot is, right? Is the package shot when they at the end card of the commercial, it shows the cars all parked in beautiful light and it says, car brand. Go shoot a few of those, because once you go to the agency, goes, I'm a car DP. I want to shoot cars. I want to shoot all kinds of things, but I'm really, I want to start by shooting cars. Here's what I've done with cars. If that agency sees your reel and your pack shots and your car footage, as it says, okay, I can sell you on smaller budget car settings for now and build your reel up to do bigger commercials. So that's what I think you should focus on if you're trying to get an agent, is show up with a very strong lane of work. Don't show up with, here's my music video and here's my documentary and here's my lifestyle and here's my car and here's, you know what I mean? Because then they'll go, okay, but none of these are that strong and there's only one of each. I can't sell you. If they want to hire you for a car commercial, I don't have a car reel for you. If they want to hire you for a lifestyle commercial, I don't have a lifestyle reel for you. So pick a lane. Whereas lifestyle, cars, peanut butter, whatever. Just pick a lane and get a real strong set of shots and spec shoots for that, one or two, and put a reel together for that, just that. So you can go to agency, go, here, if will you hire me and could you sell me with this? And that's really it. There's guys out there that come out of film school with a really strong, student reel, and agents will see that and go, I see a potential here to sell you as a new up and coming young kid. That's a completely different thing than someone that's been working and is in the industry and is trying to get an agent. You know what I mean? But if you're a film student and you come out with a film student reel, that's a different genre of trying to get. Agents will see that and go, I see the talent and I can sell you as a new kid on the block that doesn't have a reel. So that works that way. But if you're a guy like me that's been working and you're trying to get an agent, you just have to go, okay, I'm going to try to come in strong with cars. I'm going to put together my car stuff and present it and go, hey, can you sell me with this to a commercial? And they'll go, yes or no. So.
Yeah, so an agent's kind of looking for somebody who's already put together. They don't want to have to train you and help you along the way. They want to just take your reel and go sell. They don't want to have to, build you up.
Yeah, you have to come in with a product that you kind of developing and go, can you sell me with this? And they'll go, yeah or nay. That's the bottom line. You're not gonna have a meeting with an agent and go, I swear I'm a good DP, trust me, just get me out there. And then that's never gonna happen. So you need to go in there with something that they can see that they can sell you with. Okay, I see you're starting, I see you're new, but I can see that you brought this really strong couple of pieces that I can sell you for this genre, no problem. So that's how that works. But if you come in with a smorgasbord of stuff, then they don't know how to sell you. Like if you go to a store and say, hey, I got lipstick and I got peanut butter and I got bread, and no, just come in with a bunch of good bread. Like, oh, you're an amazing baker. I can sell you for that.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Nick. Like, you've given some amazing advice, but just as like a closing thought, do you have any like last advice for people like who are looking to get into like commercial world as a director of photography?
Just stick with it a lot and then wait for that door to open, because it's just, you never know where it is. And it really comes down to that. It comes down to you being at the right place at the right time and being able to walk through that door of opportunity. There's people that grind at it for a long time and they get there. So you could do that and just keep working, keep shooting, keep getting out there and doing stuff. And again, make sure you pick a lane so that is focused. Don't spray yourself out so that it's all kind of nothing. Pick a lane that's strong so you can get over that. And once you're there, you can start thinking about diversifying. But the best advice I can give people is to stay focused on what you're strong and just keep plugging away at that. Yes, network. I'm not good at it, but if you're just out in the middle, kind of swimming in the ocean, of course, networking is a lifeline. But I see a lot of people that just kind of don't pick a lane and kind of swim around everywhere, and that would just tend to lead nowhere. But if you know you're strong at doing this thing, do that thing, and focus on it. Don't get distracted thinking that you should be doing this or that. Just do that, and if you're good at it, it'll work.